Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Not Your Average Josh back here for another movie review, and today I am reviewing the new Marvel tentpole movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, third movie in the franchise, completing the trilogy finally. Of course, this movie starring Paul Rudd. You have Michael Douglas coming back, Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne, all the returning characters. Of course, Wasp, Evangeline Lilly is back. But before I get into my review here, I do want to say hit that like button, hit the comment button if it's the first time watching any of my videos. Hit that subscribe button. I very much appreciate that. You can follow me on TikTok. Add me on Snapchat where I'll post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel. Not Your Average Josh. So again, I appreciate all the support I do get. But let's get into the review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. After seeing another Disney movie, Strange World, which this movie definitely resembles in a lot of ways, just stylistically, if we took out those names that, of course, are very synonymous with the Ant-Man franchise, that very much sounds like the description for Strange World, the movie, and now I can see, I've already seen a few other people mention that, well, this is probably why they didn't market Strange World that well, because that's really the question I had with that movie. Didn't like it really too much. Just didn't feel like they really had much faith in it, but if it has kind of the same themes of this movie, I can see why they definitely didn't push that movie very much. But getting into this movie, I've only seen it one time. I've had, a few days to think on really my overall thoughts with this movie. And I will say, just stylistically, when I was in the theater just watching everything unfold in the present, I was really enjoying everything I was seeing. In terms of, comparing it to all the other Marvel movies, it really does fall in that middle tier for me. A lot of the issues I do have is really kind of nitpicky things, also really specific story details that I have. Nothing really on the surface is too wrong with this movie. I do think there is so much CGI in this movie, just besides about like 5 to 10 minutes really is just a onslaught of this, and if you're not a fan of that, I can definitely see how that would turn you off, considering the first two movies in this franchise were really more grounded, felt like more personal stories. That is definitely one of my bigger gripes with this movie. It didn't feel like Scott Lang was dealing with a problem that was personal to him. It just felt like this was a very convenient problem that all these characters were sent to the quantum realm really by accident, just because MODOK saw that they had a signal out and he basically brought them in here. So it never felt like something that was a strong problem that really affected Scott Lang or anybody else. It just felt like they were sent here to the quantum realm and now they have to deal with the consequences of that, and they just have to take on Kang because, well, they can't get out anyway. So there was a disconnect for me that from the trailers, and I will kind of get into that, I guess. I have really a couple issues with the trailers. I don't think just on a general basis, the trailer was really well done. I'm really speaking about the last trailer they put out. But I do think they showed way too much. Like, they show the ending, the line and where, Scott says, I don't have to win, we just both have to lose. And then that really is the end fight. Literally, like, a few minutes later, Ant-Man defeats Kang, or this version of Kang. And it just felt like they just gave away way too much there. I know there's some people that, they just don't watch the trailers and they said they really enjoy this movie more. And, I think just nowadays, that's just kind of an excuse that I feel like isn't necessarily valid, because the trailers just push so much now, especially with these Marvel movies. I just don't think that's an excuse for showing too much. And, you can show a lot of the story elements, but when you're showing a good portion of the third act of the film, that's where I have a problem just in general with trailers nowadays, specifically with these big movies. And not only that, but another problem I had within the trailer is that line that Scott has where he's like, he says, I don't have to win, we both have to lose. But really, when you watch the movie, it's very misleading. There is nothing that Scott is losing here in this moment. He's fighting Kang, but it's really just a general villain scenario in a movie. There's nothing that I felt that he was losing there. If he lost the fight, yeah, he'd lose the fight, but it would be just kind of like any other hero losing. It would just have lost to the villain. There was nothing personal there with Scott or anybody else, even the Wasp, which I'll get into my criticism on her character overall. The trailer was very misleading. The inserted line, it's not a crime for a trailer to be misleading, but with the way it was, it just felt like they were really pushing a story that was never there. They insert the line that Kang says to Janet, which I did like that part of the story, him knowing Janet when she was sent to the quantum realm and trapped there, and them building an actual true relationship before she finds out he's actually this conquering asshole. I did enjoy that part, but then when they insert that line he gives to her, I can give you more time with your daughter, they know, people that create the trailer, they have to know that that is going to be seen as him saying that to Scott. That just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I do get that a lot of times the creators don't have as much control on the trailers as you would like to be, but when you see a trailer like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I thought was handled way better. They don't show too much, it doesn't seem, and if they do, it's very quick cutting. I just thought that trailer was way more well done. It really makes me think that James Gunn has more control on that, but that's a whole nother discussion. In terms of the other characters, the Wasp, I just felt like she was really sidelined in this movie. As a person who really enjoyed the other two Ant-Man films, they've always been really in that upper middle tier of me in terms of all my MCU. Eventually, I would probably like to do a full-on ranking. It just felt like she was kind of just sideline in this movie. It's called Ant-Man and the Wasp. You had some people saying after, well, maybe this meant that Ant-Man was Scott, but also the Wasp in this movie meant Janet. And that could have worked, but it wasn't ever explained that way. And so when you have the second movie being called Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that was pertaining to Hope, it just seemed like she should have been a way more central part of this movie. And they do try to bring her in at the end of the movie. And, she does end up helping Scott defeat Kang, but that just felt very unearned. I just would like to see her a lot more here. It just kind of felt like she wasn't in on this movie, engaged with the story, didn't feel like she wanted to be here. And I felt also the same way with Hank Pym. Michael Douglas, he just felt like he was kind of there. He could have not been sent to this quantum realm, and it wouldn't have made much of a difference at all in this movie for me. I just felt like he was kind of floating through this movie, and really the only any type of consequential act he brings to this movie is bringing in the ants at the end of the movie to help take on Kang, which, again, I do have a little bit of issues with that as well. But I will say, as I'm kind of speaking on a lot of negatives here, a lot of the positives I have, they're very surface level. Can't really speak too much on it. The negatives here are really a lot more detailed, so it will seem like I'm more negative on this movie, and if you get to the end of this, probably be surprised at what my actual rating is. I did enjoy this movie overall. I will be going back to it, but it's not a movie that I'm going to rush to the theaters to see it again. It's just a lot of these story elements, the decisions they made in the writing with the characters, which I felt did a disservice to some of the great performances, including Jonathan Majors, which I guess I'll go ahead and get into that. He is absolutely amazing, incredible just on his performance alone. He is a star officially, I think, after this movie, and then, of course, with Creed 3 coming out. I just think the writing in the end did him a disservice. It just felt very contradictory throughout this whole movie. There was moments where you felt his power, you felt his presence, you felt the stakes that were there. But then within the writing, there would just be moments, and once you get to the end of the movie, where it felt like they were kind of cutting him off at the knees a little bit. I wish I had felt more of the danger. I never really felt the dread that Ant-Man or Wasp or Janet or Hank were going to die at all. Should have been on the edge of my seat more, especially with this as being branded as a big movie, huge movie. It just felt like I should have felt the stakes more. They were on the screen, but I didn't feel them. And I think it goes down specifically in the Kang's writing. The ending where they have the ants come in and it all feels very convenient. That's another problem I had. There's so many moments in this movie, scenarios that happen that just felt so convenient in the moment. Like, oh, they just wanted this to happen so they continue and write the next part of the story they were going to. And with Kang, I just felt like he wasn't using his powers as they were presented, as they were displayed to the audience. He was really just using the powers from the suit, but what I got from it, and from what I know from the comics, is that he is more of a mental player than he was in this movie. It just felt like he was all power and strength. I just felt like it was really too easy to take him down at the end. I just felt like, and in the end, with all these time that Ant-Man's had to deal with, felt like a very typical fight scene at the end of the movie. Ant-Man just basically ended up in a fist fight with Kang. I just felt like I wanted to feel the weirdness of the quantum realm a little more in that last fight. I also wanted to explore this world more. I think this also goes into the fact that this was so much a CGI fest. A lot of the shots you'll see, the still shots of this huge world, it all just felt too fake. Like, I never felt like there was a world beyond what we're seeing, like there was other structures and buildings and people. It all felt so formulaic and built. It didn't feel like a real tangible place. On all those levels, that's what really brought my enjoyment of this movie down. To speak on some of the positives, I do think that Ant-Man humor was still there in this movie. They did about as good of a job as they could have with that. I thought MODOK, I really enjoyed him. Maybe, honestly, in terms of a character arc, he probably had the best one in this movie, even the way they handled that in the end was a little silly, but I enjoyed it, actually. Thinking about it the past few days, I really did enjoy what they did with it. They did about as good of a job as it could have. He's just an inherently silly character. You can't just make him overly serious. And I thought they did a good job at balancing that. His humor was really good in it. But I do think in the end, it felt like Ant-Man was in another movie. Like this wasn't his movie, because while they do still do some of the fun Ant-Man action, it felt like this movie was so big that some of that was lost. And that's including with some of the side characters. You do see Jimmy Woo for a second before they go to the Quantum Realm, but he doesn't have any lines. But I would have loved to see Michael Pena and that crew back in here. They were so funny to me in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I know some people differ on that. I'd like to at least see them, for them to show up. It just felt like they really rushed into the story of this, which wasn't necessarily a problem in the moment, but I don't know, that part of it, I wanted it to feel more like the first two films, which obviously this movie wasn't going to be. So that's really where I'm just so mixed on how I really do feel about this movie. Cassie, the character, she did a really good job. I think the actress, Catherine Newton, a really good performance here. I just thought, again, my issues lie within the writing of her character, where I just felt a lot of the stuff that she had to do, it just came really easy. The only thing she really struggled with was the fighting within her suit that were to get to shrink and get bigger. But in terms of like the big moments, it just felt really convenient and easy for her at the end when she opens the portal back up for Scott and Hope to come back in. It all just felt like it was supposed to happen. I never felt like it was earned. I think that's really a lot of my biggest issues with this movie. I just felt too much convenience, not enough stakes, even though they were clearly on the screen, which I think is just the most troubling part about it. There was no performances in here that were bad. Bill Murray, his little brief cameo, you would call it, he did a really good job as well of being funny at first, kind of the classic Bill Murray, but then also going into seriousness very well. It felt very natural. It's just a lot of those little smaller story elements. It does speak to the larger picture of the MCU. For me, I've been a big fan, like obviously like many other people, from the beginning. I remember seeing the first Avengers movie with my friend. I still remember that day sitting on the very front row because there was the only 2 seats left. I've just been on this journey forever. Of course, I loved Infinity War Endgame. In terms of Phase 4, I do feel a natural fatigue, not in a fatigue way of I don't want to watch these Marvel movies or shows anymore, but you get so many movies and so many shows into this, you're going to feel that and just a general fatigue. I do think the Phase 4 feeling disparate like it has, and just with the overall consistency not being to the level that it was at, I don't have that same huge excitement that I had like for even the Spider-Man No Way Home. But I think also, we're bringing in new characters here that are very unfamiliar, and it's just very different time, and there is going to be these lulls naturally that Marvel has. Of course, online, things just get very extreme. People either love or you hate something, so it's very hard sometimes to have these conversations nowadays, which I do hate in general, but I do very much enjoy it. I would love, again, I haven't got to the end here, but leave a comment on here. What'd you think about this movie? I'd love to have any conversation about, especially with this movie, it's just hit people in so many different ways. Of course, the critics being one of the lowest of any MCU movie, and then the audience really being generally high in the mid to low 80s. I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts. But that's really kind of my main thoughts with this movie. Overall, I would say it's probably the least favorite of the trilogy of the Ant-Man movies. I'd go back and forth with the first two. I just rewatched them before I saw this movie. I just really enjoy those movies, and I think Paul Rudd's still one of the best castings, honestly, in all of the MCU. Looking back on this movie, the things that I enjoyed about it, I think will stay, not maybe elevate a little more. And the things I didn't enjoy, I do feel I'll notice them even more upon rewatch, because really, again, I've only seen it once. And the first time watching it, coming out of it, I was really enjoyed with my time with it. Post-credit scenes, I've heard a few different theories or thoughts on that, and I did feel the first one, the mid-credit scene, felt a little goofy in the end when you have all the Kangs going, like they're all like, I don't know, just crazy maniacal guys, other than the main three that were really involved in that conversation. I think it does further present that Kang is going to be this presence as we continue on. I just thought with the writing in this movie, it didn't quite hit like it could have. Just my problem with how they ended and how they dealt with this version of Kang. They presented him as being such a powerful guy. He's killed all these Avengers and destroyed worlds, and yet Ant-Man takes him out. As much as I love Ant-Man, it needed to be very believable for me to go, okay, yeah, Ant-Man. Part of me does really wish that someone had bit the dust in this movie, or even the ending. And one of the things I would have loved with it is if either Ant-Man and Hope had been trapped in the quantum realm and Kang got out, or having maybe even Hank and Janet getting trapped. Would have been more of a impact of an ending, but it just kind of felt like, oh, all right, everything works out, and it just felt like it was going to from the beginning, and I just did not want to feel that with this movie. But And overall, despite all of that, I still really enjoyed this movie on a surface level. But again, I just think my range just continued to go down as I further thought about this movie. I mentioned with that last post-credit scene, I did like how that tied into Loki. I really enjoyed the first season of Loki, so I'm very excited to where that goes, especially, man, Mobius. I love man, Owen Wilson. He is so fun to see on in anything, so I'm so happy he's a part of the MCU. This movie falls in the middle tier of the MCU for me. Not top tier, of course, not the worst of the worst like Thor Dark Worlds or whatever you want to put in that. It is a middle of the pack, and I feel like that is disappointing to me. I feel like it should have been at least on that lower end of the top tier MCU for me, but I do think Kang has the potential, with Jonathan Majors playing so many different variants of him, to be the best MCU villain. It's just going to be so hard, though, when you already have Killmonger, Thanos. I really loved Michael Keaton in Spider-Man Homecoming as Vulture, so there's already really good villains that have been displayed. I would recommend going to see this. I'm just a Marvel fan in general, so I'm going to go out and see this stuff. You don't need my recommendation. If you're going to see this, you're probably already going to go see this movie. And if not, you're probably just looking at the discussion and all the intrigue of why people are disagreeing with this movie. I'm going to give Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania a 6 out of 10. Still love to see any Marvel movies that I can. I just really love the Marvel world. I love all the characters. So in that sense, I'm always gonna enjoy Marvel movies, even the stuff that has been the worst of the worst. I did have my disappointments with this movie. Kang was brilliant in this, and it's just really the story elements that derailed what could have been a true love for this movie. I did love the sci-fi aspects, though. I will say that. I want to mention, definitely felt some Star Wars vibes in this movie with the whole rebellion happening as well. It was very interesting how they did that. I thought that was very cool. Just want to throw out there because I love Star Wars as well.
Unnatural.
Leave a comment, leave a like. What'd you think about this movie? I really am interested to hear people's thoughts. I've already watched plenty of videos on this, which I don't usually do before my reviews, but I've just been so interested in the discussion with this movie. The actual discussion, not the stupid online bullshit where people are like, I fucking hate this movie, and if you think anything different, you're fucking an asshole. Or someone who says, I love this movie, you think anything different, you're an asshole. any of that stupid shit. The actual discussion of this movie, I am very enjoyed with, and just any movies, that's why I love talking about it and discussing movies. Hit that subscribe button as well. If this is your first time watching any of my videos, I do appreciate all the support I do get. You can follow me on TikTok, you can add me on Snapchat, where I'll post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube, Not Your Average Josh. We'll look for more videos very soon, and I will talk to you guys later.